that this was an important message to reflect on at this time. And it's funny because very, very frequently in my own life, what happens is I write my reflection for a given theme, and then I live into it. In time, I live into the theme, and it just helps me realize yet again how God's ways are so mysterious. This theme is just, I believe, what we need to be reflecting on during this time. I'd like to share with you an image that has stayed with me throughout the retreat season and helps to deepen my own personal reflection on the theme. How can I keep from singing implies that there is a song which I believe resides deep within each one of us, a song that needs to find expression, that needs to find a voice. I believe that song or that melody or that tune or whatever you want to call it comes directly from the heart of God. I would like to suggest that it is perhaps the song that God was singing at the moment of creation. The song that perhaps is unique to each one of us. Maybe the song is what God was singing at the moment of your creation. Isn't that a beautiful image? God singing you into being. I love that image. To discover that song throughout one's life is a journey, but it is truly a gift to find it, to discover it. Music is, as we all know, the universal language. All people everywhere respond to music. Maybe not the same music, but music nonetheless. Had an experience this past Christmas night, which seems like an eternity ago, that somebody in my family got Alexa, you know, Alexa, they got it for Christmas. And most of us were unfamiliar at that moment with Alexa. And we were all quite taken about how smart she was. She knew all the songs, no matter what genre, no matter what age. One of the young adults, I have a lot of young adults in my family, one of the young adults started to sing some rap song, and all the young adults joined in. For me, in my opinion, it wasn't very pleasant. It really offended my personal sense of music, but they sang away, all of them. Then one of us oldsters suggested that Alexa play Bing Crosby's I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas. And quite to the amazement of the young people, we knew the words. We knew all the words, and we remembered them. And it wasn't terribly familiar to them until that point, which I thought was very interesting. Even at one point, my little grandniece, Riley, wanted a turn. And her request of Alexa was to play Wheels on the Bus. And there we all sang, Wheels on the Bus, go on and on, or however it goes. And Riley was so delighted. We all knew her song. Well, things after a while got a bit chaotic. I could not help but reflect on the fact that somehow Alexa, believe it or not, was bringing us together as a family. I have a very non-musical family, but we were being brought together as a family. And this really delighted me and gave me great joy. Also, this past Christmas was somewhat bittersweet for us. It was the first Christmas we celebrated without my sister Carolyn, who had died the previous January. At one point during the Song Fest, someone suggested that Alexa play Sweet Caroline. Now you have to know that my sister Carolyn always believed that Neil Diamond wrote that song just for her. So as we were all holding hands, reaching out, touching you, touching me, it was, I must admit, a truly healing moment in our celebration. That's what music does. It brings us together. It heals. It helps us to deal with the great joys in life, and it helps us really to deal with grief, which is what we were doing there. It helps us to find expression when words sometimes feel inadequate. Music tells stories, even instrumentals, they tell stories. It tells us that we are loved, and it tells us that we can and do love despite it all. I am certain that most of us can discover memories of times when music did what nothing else could do. I have to admit, during these days of quarantine and days and weeks and months even of quarantine, I've discovered that I need regularly to take time to surround myself with music in order to help me to deal with the loneliness and the uncertainty. My playlist has become a steady companion and a source of great consolation. I also believe that Jesus loved music, and I think he found great joy in music. I believe Jesus and his companions sang a lot. I can imagine them sitting around the fire after a long day on the road. So they must have certainly burst into song very often. As a matter of fact, I've come to think about how it could have been, Mary could have been interrupting a song fest at the wedding feast of Cana. And surely there was chanting at the Last Supper. Even on the brink of his passion, Jesus sang. In St. Mark, verse 14, Mark notes, when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. It was the last thing Jesus did before facing his passion. I believe Jesus knew and appreciated the power of music. Don't you? Don't you think he did a lot of singing? I too know firsthand the power of music, and I am certain that so do you. I am certain you have your own songs, precious to you personally and to your family. A song will often trigger our memory of an occasion or a person in your family. It was funny when I wrote that, I thought back like very spontaneously about a memory. I thought of a memory that I had from when I was a little girl, and I'm going to be dating myself when I tell you this memory. My grandpa would often, when we went to visit him, would often pull out his old Victrola, at a little console, and he'd pull out the old Victrola and put on his 78 record and sing at the top of his lung, "Oh, my papa, to me he was so wonderful." Some of you may remember that. Most of you probably won't, but dating myself. But I think the message is clear. Music creates memories. Music is the vessel of many memories. And while we all know this, we also know that sometimes the music grows dim. Sometimes the volume goes down, and sometimes, unfortunately, we fail to hear the music. It's a human reality. Sometimes we can't hear it anymore. We can't hear the rhythm. We can't hear the memory. We can't find the song, our song. And I'm sure we've all had those experiences as well. And no doubt there are many other reasons why. Sometimes perhaps the chaos and confusion of life have drowned out the melody. Perhaps having lived through these past several months of pandemic and quarantine and death and suffering, of social and civic violence that has surrounded us, the music might be feeling like it has died. Sometimes grief muffles the music. I know we have all had that experience of that hollow, empty feeling when we are in the midst of deep grief. In this place, sometimes the music grows dim and we struggle to hear the tune. I believe that there is a tempo that of life, a rhythm that when we are aware of it, we are in sync with all of creation. And when we are not in sync, life can become chaotic. We can lose a sense of feeling lost and disconnected. We may not always express it that way, but somehow the music has become dim. And there are many other reasons why we can't hear the music. Sometimes it's anger. Sometimes it's resentment. Sometimes these can cause us to be deaf to the song. Sometimes it's broken relationships or shame that prevents us from catching the tune. We lose it not because there is no music, but because it is silence beneath the struggle and pain of life. Even sometimes physical pain can prevent us from hearing the song. And sometimes, tragically, we choose not to hear the song. We remain steadfast in our negative thinking, the stinking thinking that 12-step spirituality refers to. The music is always there, but sometimes it is easier to remain on our own personal pity pot than find the courage to take the risk to move beyond this unhealthy place. Sometimes it's worry or lack of trust, which basically is the same thing. And the music disappears. It's all about our attitude. And those are just a few reasons. I'm sure that there are other reasons you can name, but the reality is that it happens to all of us. It's very real. It's part and parcel of the human experience. But, and that's a great, huge, big but, the fact of the matter is that the music never stops, ever. The melody goes on despite our personal attitudes, our reality. The song remains deep within, so deep perhaps that we can't access it, either by choice or circumstances. Sometimes we may not even be aware of it. Then what? And I suspect that this is probably the ultimate question. What can we do when we are no longer able to hear the song? What can we do when the music dies? Well, I don't have all the answers, but I can offer you a suggestion. I can share with you what I do when the music just isn't available. First of all, I have to remember, and this is a huge act of faith, I have to remember and have the belief that the song is still there. I remember it in my head, but I just can't hear it. As I said, that's an act of faith. And when that happens to me, my prayer goes something like this. Oh Lord, you know, at least, Lord, I know, at least I know up here in my head that there is a song deep within, which I just can't hear at this moment. I believe without a shadow of doubt that you planted that song deep within me at the moment of my creation. I choose to believe that it is my unique song that you were singing when I was created. I believe this, and I'm going to hang on to this belief until you give me the grace to hear it. Then I ask the Lord for the grace just to listen. When I have no more words, no more pleading, I shut my mouth, which sometimes is very hard to do. I shut my mouth and I try to listen. I listen long and I listen deeply. And sometimes it takes a short time, and sometimes it takes days or weeks or even longer. Think of Mother Teresa of Calcutta in her memoirs. She led a lifetime of darkness, but she held on to the belief. Like Mother Teresa, that's the key, to hang on to the belief no matter what. It takes patience, it takes perseverance, it takes deep faith. but just hang on. And you know, I'm saying this to myself as well as to you. Just hang on and keep on listening. When thoughts and concerns and worries or distractions set in, which they will, just set them aside. Let go of them for now and be open and keep on listening. Eventually, and this is something I promise you, something will shift. Eventually in time, you will hear the music. Perhaps softly at first, but definitely that song within will become stronger, the melody clearer and more recognizable. It is, I believe, the voice of God singing your unique song. Trust it, enjoy it, and allow yourself to be comforted by it. There's another thing that music does, and I'd like to share again another experience I had in early December when a song, a particular favorite of mine, had a profound effect on me. This song brought me to a place where I would choose not to go, but in that moment and many moments since, I have come to face the reality of today's world in all of its raw pain. I was resurrecting a group of my favorite Christmas CDs that I play over and over again during the season. And one of my very favorite songs is Kenny G's Christmas CD, entitled Believe. I'm sure some of you may be familiar with that. The very last song on that CD is entitled, it is Auld Lang Syne, but it's Auld Lang Syne, the Millennium Mix. So if you want to look it up later, that's what you have to look for. For those of you who are not familiar with it, in the background, Kenny G is playing his clarinet beautifully. He's a wonderful clarinet player. And there are in the foreground several familiar quotes that were expressed throughout the 20th century. Some of them I was familiar with, many of them I wasn't familiar with. But they are quotes from all walks of life. They were from politics, they were from social media, they were from films, wherever. But the very, very last song on that CD, not song, quote on that CD, was expressed by Al Gore at the memorial service on the occasion of the shooting in Columbine, Colorado in 1999. This was a millennium, so it was the entire 20th century. And this was one that was spoken in 1999. Many will remember he said, excuse me, the young killers of Columbine High School do not stand for the spirit of America. We can rise and we will say no more. Let me repeat that. The young killers of Columbine High School do not stand for the spirit of America. We can rise up and we will say no more. I have to tell you, that quote hit me very hard. Listening to those words from the perspective of 20 years later moved me so deeply, I cried many tears, not only that day, but many days since. Every time I heard the song, the sadness in my heart at the reality of life in our country today, whether it be school shootings or violence in our cities or pandemic or division, causes great sadness. That lack of appreciation of the dignity of all persons is truly a reality in today's life, these tragedies. Then I began to think, I wish there was something I could do to help overcome the violence, the useless loss of life, the tragedies and the harshness and the divisiveness that have now become part and parcel of who we are as a country and who we are as a society. Often the sense of hopelessness and helplessness can set in and prevent us from hearing the music like it did to me that day in December. And so I've come to discover that I have to dig deeper. I have to sit in that quiet that I spoke about earlier and pray for the courage not to give up and not to give in. In the quiet, I have come to discover something, however. There is something I can do. It's not going to change the world, but it's going to change my little corner of the world. And I have tried very hard to do it. I have come to realize that violence, negativity, judgmentalism often start right inside. I am often very hard on myself. Anybody else? Anybody else hard on this? Oh, okay, good. Not good, but at least I've got company. Often I hold myself to standards that are unachievable, even in very simple things. For example, I have come to discover in my aging process that things often take a little longer than they used to. That's been such a revelation to me. Frequently, I create to-do lists that are impossible to accomplish, but still I get annoyed with myself because I didn't complete them. Then I stop putting the negative labels on myself. I guess I'm just too lazy. I'm too unmotivated. I'm too apathetic. Whatever. I hear the bullying that I do to myself. Am I alone in this? No, okay, all the heads going. I bully myself. That's my self-talk. I frequently, often subconsciously, hear myself saying, I am so stupid. I hate that word. I am so stupid. What an idiot I am. How could I have possibly made that mistake yet again? And on and on and on. It is violence that I do to myself. I'm getting better. I don't think I'm just a total lost case. But the important thing is that I'm recognizing it sooner, I guess, and I can catch myself. And what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to make it a habit to try to speak less violently, starting with myself. This basically means that I must be gentler with myself. I must be less judgmental, more self-forgiving, learning to practice self-acceptance, getting rid of all the shoulds. I have an awful lot of shoulds, and filling my head by saying constantly, I should do this, or I shouldn't have done that. The shoulda, woulda, couldas, you know what I'm talking about. They can squelch my spirit, and they can prevent me from hearing the song within. And surprisingly enough, what happens is, if I can learn to do that, to be more accepting, more forgiving person towards myself, I can learn to do it with other people. Those in my home, those in my workplace, my friends and my colleagues, with folks I encounter every day, whether I know them or not. The cashier that's so slow in the grocery line. The man who cuts me off at the traffic light. Notice it's always a man. The man that cuts me off at the traffic light. Kind gestures have are not wasted energy. When I can be more kind, when I can be kinder to myself and more accepting of myself, I can be kinder and more accepting of the humanness of others. Even the folks I struggle with, especially the folks I struggle with. People like my spouse, I don't have one, but many of you do. People like my spouse, my incorrigible son or daughter, my less than tolerant boss, an annoying neighbor or coworker. The list goes on, probably very long for some of us. And so, my friends, rather than judging and criticizing another, I need to look at them through the eyes of love. I need to try to see them as God sees them. If we can make this a practice, and now I'm talking not just about me, but I'm talking about all of us. If we can make that a practice, I am certain that we will hear the music. My song, Born in Faith, Hope, and Love, can heal me, can heal my family, can heal my friends, can heal my wounded world. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is something. I'm reminded, Anthony DeMello's starfish story. Some of you know that starfish story, the two men that were walking along the beach, and there were all these dying starfish. And one of the men picked up one of them and threw it back into the water, and his companion said, what's that going to do? There's a million others, and it's not going to make any difference. And the man turned to him and he said, well, it made a difference for that one, didn't it? So we can do one other person. I think it's important. And so, my friends, keep listening. Listening deep. Listen when you don't want to listen anymore. Listen in the midst of these stressful and uncertain times. You will, with the grace of God, hear that special song that God is singing to you. The beautiful music that will fill your heart and heal your soul. That music that brings you peace and a sense of wholeness. Once you hear it, there's only one response. How can I keep from singing? No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. It sounds an echo in my song. How can I keep from singing? I don't sing well, but how can I keep from singing? So those are my thoughts. Those are my reflections. I hope that for many of you, or all of you, it's been a help. What I'd like to do is give us an opportunity, first of all, to reflect for a little while, and then maybe we can have a little bit of sharing. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we'll give it a shot. So I'm going to just give you 5 minutes, get up, walk around, go to the bathroom, whatever you need to do. And there's 2 questions. And again, these are just general questions that might give you a springboard for your reflections. Number 1, how has music brought you to a sense of peace and well-being during these times of uncertainty and loneliness? I'll repeat that again. How has music brought you to a sense of peace and well-being during these times of uncertainty and loneliness? And is there a specific song that has done this to you? Is there a specific memory, perhaps, that brings a song to your heart, a song that will give you that sense of peace and wholeness? Does that sound all right? Okay, so just 5 minutes and then we'll come back. I know that wasn't a very long time, but I hope that something might have triggered a thought or a reflection in your own quiet time. How we're going to do this now, what I'm going to do is ask you if